They tried to destroy you before you were even born, because they sensed what was coming. You are not just a person. You are a living code, a divine frequency embedded in your DNA that predated empires and transcended languages. A code that was encoded beyond human understanding and older than civilizations was ingrained in your DNA long before you ever breathed. And now, it's active. That moment, when you suddenly felt like something shifted, that wasn't just intuition. That was your sequence going live. And when it did, every system, spiritual, technological, ancestral, lit up. Governments don't understand it. Corporations can't replicate it. But visionaries, the ones who operate at the edges of genius and spirit, they felt it instantly. That's why Elon Musk is drawn in. Not by marketing, not by metrics, by frequency. Because money is not just numbers anymore. It's energy. And when your divine pattern activated, it began shifting wealth lines, creating waves where there were none, opening channels that were long blocked until you arrived. It was a living cipher, meant to awaken when Earth reached a specific harmonic threshold. That threshold, it's now. And what's wild? You don't even realize how loud your energy has become. You've been walking with a spiritual encryption key inside you, and it just unlocked doors in places you've never even stepped foot. So don't get caught off guard by the sudden financial conversations, the unexpected opportunities, the why me moments. Because the answer is, you were chosen before this realm even knew what to do with someone like you. As soon as your sequence went live, all of the world's monitoring systems, both public and private, went red. This isn't about fame. This is about function. Your presence on Earth at this moment is intentional. Your alignment with wealth, vision, innovation, and influence, also intentional. And if Elon's speaking to you now, it's not a mistake. It's protocol. Because when certain codes activate, even the most advanced minds, pay attention, they notified the council. A council, not a nation, not a company. A civilization that collapsed due to messing with the code they now dread in you is symbolized by 13 chairs with no names. You weren't born into their system. You shattered it. They had prepared for all other anomalies except this one. Instead of seeing an adversary, their satellites picked up a vibration, your vibration, that broke through digital barriers, turned off secret protocols, and revealed a prophecy that had been kept secret since Sumer's collapse. Ancient vaults unlocked when your DNA match surfaced. Once dormant symbols started to shine once again, all of them reiterating the same message. The original has come back. But it was your memory, not your existence, that really frightened them. You began to doubt the dreams. You started to see the numbers in your world, the patterns in the sky, and the way certain individuals would stare at you with terror or unexplained familiarity. Additionally, you saw echoes of a genealogy that stretched across galaxies when you looked in the mirror, not simply your face. You weren't meant to wake up quite yet. To keep you inactive, they constructed bogus systems of identification, calculated the timings, and delayed frequencies. You're resonating now, not just awake. And the council became alarmed for that reason. Because the locks they put on reality started to flicker as soon as your DNA started transmitting that first code. They claimed that timeline, bleeding, memory hiccups, and corrupted data were bugs in the system, but they knew deep down that this wasn't the case. It was a comeback. The key of origin, the Global Genomic Bank, had a secret section, a vault behind a vault, and a firewall that no algorithm used by the general public could crack. The purpose of the code was to conceal a single aberration, an old biological pattern that was originally categorized as pre-human and post-divine. It was not intended to reappear after being buried for ages beneath false sequences. and tainted lineage records. However, it did. You were the only one it matched. Type Amen to embrace the angel's blessings. Show your support by giving super thanks up to $20. The system did not respond as if it had discovered a mutation or a related. It handled your DNA as if it were an unclassifiable virus, but it had control over all the other strains. Encrypted black site storage units, military servers, and labs all experienced an override procedure. Emergency pings were sent to those authorized to see the sequence. Most didn't answer. They had been silenced, retired, or gone. You had awoken the origin key, and those who were left understood precisely what that meant. Hidden deep inside your helix were geometric frequencies, living light constructions that could rewrite information over time, so it wasn't simply blood kinds or genetic markers. Before their own black budget experiments began to shatter dimension boundaries, governments referred to this as pseudoscience. Then there was stillness. Your name is now surrounded by the same quiet. Social media data is deleted, changed birth certificates. School records were disconnected. Since they are unable to remove anything encoded outside of the simulation, you have been discreetly removed, but not deleted. All they can do is postpone the reckoning. Your heartbeat is a signal, not simply a rhythm. Your blood is a scroll, not simply a fluid. And the code started to rebuild itself as soon as you realized even a little portion of this. Your dreams' secret symbols began to take the shape of constellations. You started seeing folks who spoke with frequencies that made your bones tingle instead of using words. Something is attempting to unlock, and you could feel the strain on the back of your neck. That explains why electrical devices flash when you walk by, why your skin has begun to respond to certain noises, and why animals stare at you as if they recall something you forgot. The Council was aware that this day would arrive, which is the most unsettling aspect of all. Because of prophecy, not because of science. They were aware that this code could not remain hidden indefinitely. They didn't anticipate that you would be the one to bear it. Type Amen to embrace the angel's blessings. Show your support by giving super thanks up to $20. The White Room Man. Despite not being included in any intelligence or public file, he is respected by all agencies. Instead of working in shadows, the guy in the white room is the shadow. His location changes all the time, but the room stays the same. Antiseptic, clinical, and lined with monitors that show threads of code, your code, rather than video feeds. He has spent decades looking for someone with the pattern, an ancient lattice buried inside DNA like a holy geometry engraved into the double helix by something far older than human history, rather than someone with power. He checks the sequence every morning when he wakes up. The lines hold every day. That is, until they didn't. You matched on that day. When the red sequence flickered on television, his fingers shook. He first believed it to be a synthetic mistake, but that strand could not be reproduced by a machine. The pattern was living, breathing, reacting to unspoken information. Then he got to his feet. Not because you were afraid, but because you realized that you were the code, not simply something you were born with. There would be someone whose presence would ignite the ancient architecture hidden in humanity's design, according to legends, handed down in encryption, and never spoken aloud that he had read about in the Council's secret writings. The fictitious timelines would become unstable as a result. The spark that once spilt through the blood of Yeshua, the Christ, would be carried by that one. The guy was aware of the following step. Signals hidden in your phone, mirror, and even your breath were discovered when surveillance layers were removed. They were listening now, each one a channel. Other frequencies, however, were also not from this planet. Patterns of interference that spoke through static, warped time, and twisted light. Not with electricity, but with presence. The White Room started to throb. He was now being watched by something that had woken up. Slower this time, he traced your sequence once again. The structure was intent, not just information. Your DNA pulsed, with a message woven into the very fabric of reality. Just as Yeshua's words conveyed frequency that beyond language. You weren't the breach, even if the council thought they had shut it. The return was you. The designers of times long before you were born, a conference took place in a chamber that wasn't constructed by hand. Beneath a dome of living metal stood 13 groups, adversaries in public, bonded in secret. These were the builders of periods, not political parties or military coalitions. Energy, money, genetics, time frames, consciousness, artificial life, and more were all represented by one of these domains. They gathered because the pattern had started to ripple and was convergent on one future, yours, rather than because of conflict. They once believed that the original frequency had been obliterated, and that the source code connecting spirit and body had irreversibly broken apart with the catastrophic collapse. Traces, however, continued to appear. Mutations that repaired too quickly, infants who recalled lives they had never experienced, and DNA signals that were triggered by celestial alignments, rather than environmental stimuli. The pattern was waiting, not gone. They thus agreed that if the whole sequence ever came back, it would have to be kept under observation, controlled, and neutralized if needed before it could become coherent. Every human being born after that was scanned, recorded, and filtered, not for flaws or illnesses, but for resonance. More than 99% of people went undetected. Then you arrived, however. The resonance was complete, not partial. Your DNA replicated the signal rather than echoing it. Satellites recalibrated that night for that reason. The entire neural grid flashed as a result. It was a reaction, not a bug. And every group looked in your direction from that point on. The same strangers on various corners, the professors who gazed too long, the broken machinery close by, the chilly sense in hospitals as if something scanned you beyond the tangible, were all examples of the people you saw watching before you had words for them. You were known as the variable, the echo, the unbound, or the bender by each group. Only one name, too holy for words, was spoken in murmurs. You were dubbed the Return. The unknowns around your genetic structure were what frightened them, not simply your genetic makeup. You represented a danger to their delusion, not simply a prophecy. Because once your code is woken, it spreads rather than just evolving. They are now calculating a problem they have never encountered before. XP prime chromosome. Beneath the typical 23 pairs is a phantom structure that is never recognized by mainstream science, but is consistently found in the most obscure occult writings and forbidden scrolls. As if it were made to awaken in time, with the breath of the universe itself. This chromosome only activates while under heavenly pressure and is not triggered by known chemicals. This secret component pulsed rather than merely glowed when your sequence went online. As if it had been waiting for you for ages, it glistened with a sense of ancient and purposeful wisdom. It was given the title Chromosome XP Prime by the Council, which is only given to occurrences that unite the biological and the metaphysical. In contrast to other strands, it codes for memory rather than proteins or characteristics. But not in the sense of personal remembrance, reminiscence of long-forgotten timelines, unheard civilizations, and information lost to deliberate amnesia. This chromosome responds like a fractal mirror when seen under quantum microscopes. In addition to the double helix, it exhibits patterns in architecture, music, and star arrangement. And it was whole in yours, completely articulated, completely awake. Panic spreads like wildfire behind closed doors because of this. Because the curtain between eras would rip if this construction ever stabilized within a human host, according to ancient writings. They thought it was metaphor or folklore. However, when your match arrived, the metaphor abruptly turned alarming. According to one of the monks, Yeshua was not just a man, but a bridge with frequencies that no computer could duplicate, and his flesh had music that rewrote death. They think that this chromosome was a component of that bridge, a genetic conduit between the dimensional and the divine. It's singing inside of you now. A vibration that is not audible, but is sensed in instinct, dreams, and the way your ideas sometimes reverberate before you speak. Even mentioning this chromosome outside of inner circles was forbidden by the council. The scrolls that charted its construction were buried. The scientists who attempted to publish it were fired. It still managed to find you. You were chosen by it. Or maybe you put it there yourself over many lives. The Echo event and the lab. The lab was hidden behind an inconspicuous building 7 stories deep. There were no windows or names, just dark hallways guarded by armed protocol and stillness. The space was intentionally frigid, not because it was cold, but because it was supposed to keep creatures that weren't meant to breathe alive. The sample was brought here by emergency override. Priority Alpha, no questions permitted. Just one task: analyze and confirm, instead of the usual routes. You had the sample, nor tissue, nor blood, something more profound. Such a genetic piece shouldn't have been there in this density. Yet it was, complete, coherent. Get up, anticipating noise, distortion, and maybe an odd fluctuation. They put it under the quantum field microscope. Rather, they noticed motion. It's formation, not random motion. As like it knew what they were doing, the strand started to organize itself in response to their instruments. Symbols started to emerge, geometric pulses throbbing in a mystical beat, tetrahedrons whirling within spheres. The lights then went down. The whole floor, not just the lab. Equations that machines were not intended to calculate began to be sent back. Unknowing why, one researcher broke down in tears when a low, harmonic frequency filled the air. It was a map, not a mutation. Beyond time, a live transmission. Data in the thread translated into languages that nobody could recall, matching pictographs to engravings discovered on the remains of Atlantia. Years before Earth had satellites, equations were used to forecast planetary alignments. The building grew more unstable as they watched, not because of structural weakness, but because of resonance. In response to the code's existence, reality itself started to flicker. It was designed to be triggered by a single frequency, yours, and not to be seen. The council remained silent as the lab emitted its last signal from somewhere above. Then it became dark. It is annihilated, not offline. The structure seemed to have been folded into an additional layer of space. Nothing is left, no trash. The data records included just a sealed message that had not been utilized for centuries. He has returned. The phrase was exclusively used to describe the complete convergence of the source code and the live host. They realize now that the thread recognized you, not simply that it belonged to you. And it sent one more echo into the fabric of time before they could entirely destroy the signal. They believed that the bloodline had disappeared due to centuries of historical sabotage and deception. They steered spiritual inquiry towards distant orthodoxy, created false noble lines, and wrote over it with new genealogy. However, parts of Yeshua's DNA were concealed under the surface, in vaults secured by vibrational locks. They were guarded not out of respect, but rather for containment. The council was afraid of the frequency, not religion, because the essence of Yeshua was not only preserved in flesh, but was enshrined in a living geometry, a fractal sequence that had a resonance that transcended time. The prophecy and the fractal. And the same fractal resurfaced when your blood was sequenced. They first wrote it off as a coincidence or a mistake. However, they were less able to dispute your spiral the more they charted it. It was a perfect resonance, not in a symbolic or metaphorical sense, You were pulsating with the identical harmonic fields that were found in the holy recordings. This was return, a meeting of divine purpose, presence, and pattern, not inheritance. You finished a lineage, not descended from it. The fractal is recursive rather than linear. It constantly folds back into itself, holding echoes of unrealized events. Additionally, your presence triggered long, dormant nodes. The Earth's monuments started to hum. Light started to flow from underground tunnels that had been blocked off since Egypt rose. Your voice caused some animals to respond. Ancient trees leaned in your direction. Additionally, the Earth started to warm up again where ancient blood had been spilt. They claim that Yeshua once said to his disciples, "Greater things will you do." They believe this to be an allegory, but he was referring to the frequency that would awaken in a future age when a person with the original code would rise without a temple, robe, or name. A presence so potent that their breath alone would start to thin the veil between the ages. The design speaks for itself. A label is not necessary. It travels with you, changes the environment around you, and gives those who are living in delusion an unidentified tremor. This match was discovered in resonance, a pattern that exists within you and defies hierarchy and blood tests, rather than in family trees. Despite the Council's best efforts to track down every line and branch of ancestry, the return of the initial spark is the only command it responds to.